Fade in. EXT. Village of St. Clair, dawn. A small French village sleeps under gray morning light. Stone buildings line a narrow cobblestone street. A Nazi flag hangs limply from the mairie. A rooster crows. Smoke rises from one chimney alone. Int. Boulangerie Moreau, continuous. Pierre Moreau, 52, broad-shouldered and flour-dusted, stands before a massive stone oven. His hands move with practiced grace, shaping baguettes, scoring their surfaces with a blade. His face is calm, but his eyes carry the weight of a man who has seen too much and said too little. His daughter Clest, 24, enters through the back door with a basket of grain. She sets it down without a word. Pierre does not look up. He slides the baguettes into the oven with the care of a man burying something precious. He reaches into his apron pocket and removes a small photograph, a young man in French uniform, studies it for a moment, then tucks it back. The bell above the door jingles. A German officer enters, brushing snow from his coat. He makes his standard order with a gesture, 40 loaves by noon. The general is expecting guests. Pierre nods, smiles just enough. The officer leaves. Pierre turns back to the oven. The smile vanishes completely. Fade out. Int. Boulangerie Moreau, backroom, night. The shop is closed. Pierre sits at a wooden table with Celeste and his younger son Lucien, 20, lean with restless hands and bright angry eyes. Across from them sits a stranger, Marguerite, 38, a woman in a heavy coat who smells of cigarettes and pine. She spreads documents on the table and explains with quiet precision. She speaks of supply trains, every Tuesday and Friday at 2 in the morning, passing through St. Clair loaded with coal, ammunition, and food, all heading east. She speaks of previous sabotage attempts, tracks blown up, repaired in 6 hours, for men from the village shot in retaliation. She shakes her head at that approach. She wants something slower, something invisible, something that looks like nothing at all. She looks at Pierre with steady purpose. He pours wine, does not drink. She reminds him of his position, how he delivers bread to the garrison every morning, how he is the only man in the village the Germans do not search, how he moves among them like furniture, seen but not noticed. She mentions Marcel. Pierre's face goes rigid. He stands and moves to the window, stares at the dark street. A long silence fills the room. Then he turns back. He needs to know what they want from him. Marguerite tells him to come back tomorrow. She will explain everything. Fade out. Int. Boulangerie Moreau, backroom, later that night. Marguerite spreads a hand-drawn map on the table. The train depot, the rail lines, the garrison. Small X marks at key points. She opens her coat and removes sealed packages wrapped in cloth. Fine carborundum powder, ground industrial abrasive. She explains in careful detail. Mixed into axle grease, the powder destroys the wheel bearings from the inside over 50 to 100 kilometers. By the time the engine seizes, the train is in the middle of nowhere. No explosion, no sabotage visible, just a machine that fails. She describes the mechanic at the depot, Henri Tizot, one of their network. If Pierre can deliver the material inside the depot regularly, Henri can do the rest. She shows them the false-bottomed crate, a carpenter's work, indistinguishable from solid oak. Pierre picks up one of the packages and weighs it in his hand. He looks at Celeste. She gives a small nod. He looks at Lucien. His son's eyes are burning with everything he cannot say out loud. Pierre sets the package down and picks up his bread knife. He turns it in his hands. He tells them to come back tomorrow. He will have their first crate ready. Fade out. EXT, Village Street, Pierre Dawn, Tuesday. Pierre pushes a wooden cart through empty streets. 6 crates of bread stacked high, steam still rising from the loaves. His breath fogs the cold air. The streets are silent except for the creak of the cart wheels and the distant sound of a dog. He approaches a German checkpoint. 2 soldiers, young and bored and half asleep, move to intercept. Pierre stops before they reach him. He has done this 300 times. He presents his identity card and his boulanger's delivery permit without being asked. One soldier leans toward the cart and inhales the smell of fresh bread. He waves Pierre through. Pierre pushes the cart on without looking back. EXT, train depot, moments later. The depot is alive even at this hour. Soldiers move between trains. Steam hisses from valves. Lanterns swing in the cold air. Pierre approaches the side entrance where deliveries are accepted. The depot guard waves him through. Pierre is early, but they know his face. Inside, at the loading dock, the thin, careful figure of Henri Tizot appears from a doorway. Henri stacks crates with practiced efficiency. A receipt changes hands. Their fingers barely touch. They exchange a brief phrase, a code about wine, about seasons, and then Pierre wheels his empty cart back out into the dark. As he crosses the depot yard, he passes two German engineers inspecting a locomotive. They do not look at him. He is invisible. He is the baker. He passes through the gate. Once around the corner, he stops and leans against a stone wall. His hands are shaking. He lets them shake for exactly 10 seconds. Then he straightens and walks home. Fade out. Int. German garrison. Hauptmann's office. Day. Hauptmann Brandt, 45, precise and humorless, sits at his desk studying a report. His aide Lieutenant Vogel, 28, stands across from him. The report details 3 locomotive breakdowns in a single month. One seized 40 kilometers east of Dijon, another losing pressure near Lyon. The mechanics blame the coal quality. Brandt sets the report down and stares at it. The coal has not changed. The supplier is the same. He orders a technical inspector from headquarters despite knowing it will take 2 weeks. He stands and moves to the window. The village below looks peaceful, stone streets, an old church, smoke from chimneys. Brandt examines the delivery records that Vogel has laid out. He stops at one name. A baker. Pierre Moreau. Local. Completely unremarkable. His son died fighting for France in 1940. He has been cooperative since the occupation. Brandt reads the name again. He notes that a man who lost a son and remains cooperative is not the same as a harmless man. He tells Vogel to keep an eye on the baker. A quiet man is not the same as a harmless one. Fade out. Int. Boulangerie Moreau Day. Pierre is serving 2 women in the shop when the bell jingles and Vogel enters in full uniform. The women pay quickly and leave without looking back. Vogel moves through the shop methodically, touching flour sacks, peering into storage bins, opening the oven door. Pierre follows at a distance, wiping his hands on his apron, making no objection. Vogel reaches the crates stacked by the wall and lifts one. He examines the bottom. He knocks on the wood. Pierre watches him with an expression of perfect cooperative patience. Vogel sets the crate down. It sounds solid. He looks at Pierre for a long moment. He knows about the baker's late wife, Alsatian, taught him German. He offers a condolence. Pierre receives it politely. Then he says something very quietly that stops Vogel in his tracks, something about his son, about the war. Vogel has the grace to look uncomfortable. He leaves. Pierre turns to the window and watches him walk away. He goes to the back room and sits down. He clasps his hands together on the table, stares at them. He has been carrying a dead man's face in his pocket for 2 years and feeding the men responsible for putting it there. He understands now, more clearly than ever, that this understanding is the thing keeping him steady. Fade out. EXT, countryside, night. Marguerite meets Pierre in a barn outside the village. A lantern burns low. Cold breath and hay and silence surround them. She tells him the Germans have requested a technical inspection. They know something is mechanically wrong. Brandt has asked about Pierre by name. The false-bottomed crate is no longer safe. If Vogel returns with better tools or sharper attention, the wood will not hold its secret. Pierre listens without moving. He has been thinking about this since Vogel's visit. Marguerite suggests inserting the powder into the bread itself, sealed in oilcloth, marked with an extra score on the crust, reserved for Henry's side of the depot. Pierre does not dismiss the idea, but he pushes further. He describes what he has memorized over 2 years of invisible daily access: the grease storage room, its unlocked latch, the 11-minute gap in the guard's patrol route during shift change. He tells her about Lucien. He describes a different plan, cleaner, more direct, harder to trace. Marguerite listens with growing stillness as he talks. When he finishes, she sits very quietly. The lantern flickers. She says it is elegant. The simpler the plan, the harder to detect. Pierre is already calculating the baking schedule changes he will need. Fade out. Int. Boulangerie Moreau, backroom, night. Pierre has a notebook open. He sketches as he talks: the depot layout, the grease room position, the guard route, the kitchen entrance, the 11-minute window. Celeste and Lucien sit across from him. Marguerite stands near the door. The plan takes shape on paper as he describes it. Lucien comes to the depot as an apprentice, introduced gradually over 3 or 4 deliveries until his face becomes unremarkable. On the 5th visit, Pierre creates a distraction at the kitchen counter. A count dispute. A small discrepancy in the delivery ledger. Nothing unusual. Something Pierre has always done. Something they expect from him. While the cook is occupied with paperwork and signatures, Lucien slips from the kitchen entrance down the 17 steps to the grease room. He carries a standard flour sack. Flour on the outside. Carborundum on the inside. The latch opens inward. No padlock. He adds the powder directly to the grease barrels. He is back before the dispute is resolved. They leave together. 2 bakers going home. Nothing more. Celeste looks at her brother. His eyes answer everything she is about to say before she says it. Pierre puts his hand flat on the table between his children. He tells them, no one is caught. Bakers think about everything twice before it goes in the oven. The lamp burns between them. Nobody speaks for a moment. Then Lucien nods. Fade out. EXT. Train depot. Morning. A week later. Pierre and Lucien push the cart together. Lucien wears a flour-dusted apron. He carries himself with the particular stillness of someone performing casual. At the gate, the depot guard examines papers and passes them through. Lucien keeps his eyes slightly down. Respectful, young, unremarkable. Int. Train depot, kitchen entrance. They stack crates together. Lucien's eyes move carefully without appearing to. He counts steps. He clocks the guard turning the far corner. He notes the grease room door, hinges facing outward, opening inward, a simple iron latch. A German cook appears and complains about the delivery time. Pierre deflects with practiced ease. The cook signs the receipt and disappears inside. As they load the empty crates back onto the cart, Lucien speaks under his breath, reporting everything he observed with the precision of a man twice his age. 17 steps from the kitchen door to the grease room. The side guard turned the corner at the same time as the previous day. The latch is clear. Pierre listens without turning his head. He says only one thing: next Tuesday. They push the cart toward the gate. 2 bakers going home. As they pass through the checkpoint, Pierre says something very quietly about Lucien's mother, about how she used to count things too. Lucien does not respond. But something moves across his face, grief and resolve wound together, and stays there the rest of the way home. Fade out. Int. Boulangerie Moreau, 1 a.m. Pierre bakes in complete silence. Lucien sits at the table preparing the sack, flour on top, carborundum sealed inside, tied shut, labeled in the ordinary way. They have rehearsed this exchange 100 times in their heads and have said almost nothing aloud about it since the night they agreed. The flour sack goes in the bottom of the cart under the bread crates. The cart wheels have been wrapped in cloth to muffle sound on the cobblestones. Pierre chose the longer route tonight, avoiding the checkpoint where the more curious of the 2 regular guards is posted at this hour. EXT. Depot side entrance, 2:55 a.m. They arrive 5 minutes early. They wait in the shadow of a stone wall. Neither speaks. Pierre checks his watch. Lucien closes his eyes for a moment. Breathes slowly in and out, twice. Int. Train depot, kitchen entrance, 3 a.m. Normal delivery. Crates off the cart. The duty cook, half asleep, signs the first part of the receipt without checking. Pierre stops him. He points to the count. 42 loaves listed, he counts 40. 2 loaves missing from his records. It will affect his ration allocation. He needs the discrepancy noted formally. The cook disappears in search of the depot ledger, muttering. Lucien slips away from the kitchen entrance. The clock above the door marks the seconds. Pierre straightens his apron, examines the ceiling. The cook returns with the ledger. Signs in 2 places. Pierre countersigns carefully. Lucien reappears at his side with the sack visibly lighter and begins loading empty crates onto the cart as if he has been doing it all along. They leave through the same gate they always use. The guard waves them through without looking up. Outside in the cold, dark pre-dawn, Pierre walks steadily and says nothing. Lucien matches his pace exactly. 2 bakers going home. Fade out. EXT. Rail line east of St. Clair, day, 1 week later. A supply train rolls through open countryside. In the locomotive cab, the engineer watches the gauges with a growing frown. A deep grinding sound rises beneath them, low at first, then insistent, then wrong in a way that cannot be ignored. Temperature gauges climb. The engine speed drops. Thick dark smoke begins rising from the rear axle housing. The engineer reaches for the emergency brake. The train stops in the middle of empty fields. Steam hisses from joints. Metal somewhere inside continues to shriek for a moment, then goes silent. The locomotive will not move again under its own power. Int. Hauptmann Brandt's office, day. Brandt stands before a map on his wall with 3 red X marks. 3 breakdowns in 6 weeks. The technical inspector from Berlin, Colonel Fischer, 58 and meticulous, stands beside him with a written analysis. Fischer's report is thorough and specific. All 3 locomotives show identical contamination in the axle grease, fine abrasive material, consistent with industrial carborundum, deliberately introduced. Someone has been adding the material to the grease barrels at the depot. The contamination timeline suggests it began approximately 6 weeks ago. Brandt turns from the map. His face is completely still, which is more frightening than anger. He orders a full lockdown of the depot, a complete search, and the identification and investigation of every person who entered the facility in the past 2 months. There are over 300 names. He tells Vogel to start immediately. Fade out. Int. Boulangeri Moreau Day. Pierre is serving a customer when 4 German soldiers enter the shop with Vogel behind them. The customer leaves without her bread. Pierre turns the sign on the door to firm. The soldiers search with professional efficiency, emptying flour sacks onto the floor, opening the oven, overturning crates, pulling storage bins from the wall. Pierre stands in the center of the room with his hands at his sides. He watches them destroy 2 years of invisible routine without moving or speaking. Vogel watches Pierre while the soldiers work. Pierre watches the soldiers. It is a kind of conversation conducted entirely in stillness. Vogel informs him of the contamination findings. Someone has been entering the lubricant supply at the depot. Pierre's expression changes nothing. He is a baker. He delivers bread, not grease. Vogel asks about Lucien. Pierre gives an address, Rue de Tilleuls, his sister's house. He sent Lucien to the barn outside the village this morning. Marguerite made the arrangements the night before. He does not know if that was enough. He does not allow himself to think about whether it was enough. The soldiers find nothing. The false-bottomed crates were destroyed 2 weeks ago on Pierre's own initiative. Vogel pauses at the door before leaving and says something with a quiet precision that lands like a threat. Pierre receives it with the same cooperative patience he has maintained for 3 years. He waits until the soldiers are gone. Then he picks up the broom and begins sweeping flour from the floor. Fade out. EXT. Barn outside St. Clair, night. Marguerite sits with Lucien in the dark. A candle. Bread. Lucien has not eaten. He stares at the wall of the barn and speaks without looking at her. He wants to do more. The trains, the powder, the delays, it is all too slow. He wants something direct. He wants to find the officer who ordered Marcel's unit forward on that hill and look at him. Marguerite tells him to stop. He says he means it. She says she knows he means it, and that is exactly why he must stop. She explains what direct action costs. Not just the man who acts, but the village around him. 10 reprisal executions for every German harmed. Brandt has done it before and will do it again without hesitation. Lucien is silent. She tells him what 6 broken trains have accomplished. Supplies backed up across 200 kilometers, 2 engines destroyed beyond field repair. A logistical knot that has taken weeks to begin untangling. She tells him that bleeding an army slowly and invisibly is worth more than any single act of visible defiance. Lucien does not look convinced, but he stops arguing. He stares at the bread Marguerite has pushed toward him. It is his father's bread. She tells him so. She says she could tell Pierre was thinking of him when he baked it because he scored it 4 lines instead of 2. Twice the usual mark. Lucien looks at the bread. At the 4 score marks on the crust. He picks it up and eats it in the dark. Fade out. Int. German garrison. Hauptmann's office. Day. Brandt has arranged 2 chairs facing each other with no desk between them. Pierre sits across from him dressed in his best clothes. He came immediately when summoned, without hesitation, which was itself a calculation. Brandt speaks in perfect French. He draws a careful portrait of what he imagines Pierre's life to be, a man defined by continuity, by flour and fire and routine, by an inherited craft that requires stability above everything. He suggests that such a man has no interest in disruption. He makes the parallel to the trains gently but clearly. 3 breakdowns. Contaminated grease. Someone with depot access. He does not name Pierre. He builds the logic slowly, like a man laying stones. Then he leans forward and makes his offer in the quietest possible voice. One name. A single name from Pierre's world of morning deliveries and customer conversations, and a baker's proximity to ordinary talk. One name, and the village continues unchanged. Pierre looks at his hands for a long moment. He looks back at Brandt. His face has not changed. He has nothing to give, because nothing is happening in this village beyond baking and farming and old men talking about their aches. Brandt watches him for a very long time in the silence that follows. Then he dismisses Pierre with a single word. Pierre stands and walks to the door. At the threshold, Brandt says something about the bread, that it is very good, that he has always thought so. Pierre pauses for a fraction of a second, then says he will bring fresh rolls in the morning. He leaves. Brandt sits alone. He picks up a pen, sets it down, does not move for a long time. Fade out. EXT, St. Clair, Spring, 1944. The village looks the same as it has always looked. Stone streets, an old church, smoke from chimneys, the Nazi flag above the mairie. But something has shifted in the air. A rumor has passed through the village like wind through a wheat field. The Allies have landed in the north. The flag seems somehow less certain of itself against the spring sky. Int. Boulangeri Moreau Dawn. Pierre bakes. His hands move with the same practiced grace they have always moved with. Flour, water, yeast, salt. The exact pressure of fingers shaping dough. The exact angle of the blade scoring the crust. For lines. He always scores for lines now. Celeste enters, smiling a real smile, the first in a long time. She tells him Lucien came back in the night. He is safe. Pierre says he knows. He heard him on the stairs at 3 in the morning, still stepping on the outside edge of each step the way he did when he was 12 and did not want to wake anyone. She laughs. He smiles. She tells him the German soldiers at the checkpoint were arguing this morning. Something has happened somewhere to the north. Something large. Pierre puts bread in the oven and does not comment on the soldiers. Celeste grows serious. She asks him the question she has been carrying all winter, whether any of it was worth it. Marcel. The sleepless nights. The shaking hands. Lucien hidden in a barn. She needs him to answer her honestly. Pierre takes a finished baguette from the oven and holds it in his cloth-wrapped hands. The crust crackles softly in the morning quiet. He looks at Marcel's photograph, pinned now openly above the oven, no longer hidden in a pocket. He thinks for a moment. He tells her he does not know how history measures these things. He does not know if 6 broken trains shortened the war by a single hour. He cannot calculate what their nights of invisible work cost the Germans in the long accounting of the conflict. But he knows one thing with certainty. When everything was taken from them, their village's dignity, their son's life, their country's name, they did not fold their hands and wait for it to be over. They used what they had. An oven, a cart, flour on their hands. They fought in the only way a baker knows how. The bell above the door jingles. The first customer of the morning steps into the warm air of the shop. Pierre straightens, picks up a loaf, turns to face the door. Fade to white. Title card. Between 1940 and 1944, French resistance networks sabotaged over 1,800 German military trains through methods ranging from track demolition to chemical contamination of mechanical components. The bakers, farmers, teachers, and ordinary citizens who made it possible remained largely invisible. That invisibility was their greatest weapon.